I'm Emily Rooney. Welcome to Beat the Press. Our topics: the media gets twisted in knots trying to cover Jason Collins. Media critic Howard Kurtz leaves the Daily Beast, or was he fired? The national media continues to camp out in Copley Square, and our panel rants and raves of the week. Joining me are Dan Kennedy of Northeastern University, WGBH's Kelly Crossley, Marjorie Egan, also of WGBH and the Boston Herald, and former network reporter and media consultant TJ Winnick. First, gays and lesbians can now get married in 10 states. They can serve openly in the military and in Congress. Even the Boy Scouts are slowly coming around. So when NBA player Jason Collins came out this week, the media wrestled with how to place it in context. The cover of Sports Illustrated says it all. Jason Collins says he never intended to be the face of gay athletes, but he's happy to start the conversation. And did he ever?
It is a revelation like no other.
Just shatters stereotypes in the macho world of pro sports.
This announcement by Jason Collins is being called groundbreaking. It's being called a game changer.
But for all the attention lavished on Collins, there's an inherent contradiction, making a very big deal over something the media says is not a big deal.
People under the age of 34 look at us having this conversation and go, so what?
Right. It's kind of silly that in 2013 that this kind of stuff I think we'll look back on it years later and say, are you kidding me?
Even Martina Navratilova, who's been out for over 30 years, captured the tension.
I think it's just puts it on the front page, and most of all, we don't want being gay to be an issue.
A non-issue is exactly what happened when college basketball star Brittany Griner recently disclosed she was a lesbian. No one cared. So why is Collins a big deal? Soccer star Robbie Rogers, who came out earlier this year, says it's different for men.
For professional athletes especially, you try to live up to the stereotype, of this macho athlete.
Maybe Sports Illustrated can consider that stereotype in its next swimsuit edition. We have a man on front there. When I started thinking about this is such a narrow category of personage, and to make it that big a deal, the pro athlete, African American, because when you look at the history of, and there are many other athletes of all stripes who have come out over the years, but the fact that it's one of the big professional, teams, one of the big sports, black and, but when you think about it, all these other people have come out, and the ones who have, like Martina and Brittany Griner, women, it's like, dismissive. Everybody, women, in professional sports, well, everybody knows they're lesbian. So it's like, no, seriously, that's a stereotype. But the macho world of professional sports, you can't imagine that anyone be gay. That's sort of how it was reported.
Well, it does have a bit of a feel of the best on-base percentage by a left-handed second baseman. But, I do think it is kind of a big deal. Because it is one of the big male professional sports, and I think culturally we are much more comfortable with lesbians than we are with gay men. You brought up the Boy Scouts in the setup piece. The Boy Scouts are still tying themselves up in knots over this. Meanwhile, the Girl Scouts have had lesbian adult leaders for years, and it's really not an issue. And I think that reflects broader cultural attitudes. Then you have some of these earlier athletes like Martina Navratilova who came out. It's an individual sport. This is men. It's a big macho sport, and it's a team sport. And it sounds silly, but it conjures up the locker room, all those things.
No, I don't know why anybody would say it isn't a big deal, because of a lot of what you just said. When you think of the whole ultra, what's uber macho in America, it's the NBA, it's the NFL, it's the Navy SEALs. A lot of people are out in the military, men that are out in the military, but I don't know if we have any gay Navy SEALs yet. So this is a first. This is the first person that's in that world that has come out while he's been playing. So I do think it's a very, very big deal. And let's face it, men still run the world. Gay men are much scarier to men than lesbians. I mean, a lot of men kind of like lesbians. They like that whole idea. They're not so, gay men, it's a different deal. So why people would not say this is a big deal, I think it's a huge deal. I think it's great. And I hope this opens the floodgates.
Well, I'm at a loss on a couple of levels. First of all, when as a pro athlete, not black when he's gay, apparently. Because lots of people, I was just stunned by lack of talking about that in the conversation.
And the only one who did was Spike Lee.
Yeah, I just think that's fascinating.
No one dared mention the black.
I think that's fascinating. Yeah. So, you know, that's one thing. So the other thing I thought was, in real estate, it's location, location, location. In journalism, it's timing, timing, timing. A big story becomes a bigger story if we're looking to try to change the conversation in some way. The Boston Marathon bombing has just sucked us up, as well it should, and we're intensely focused on that. So I thought to myself, it had come out obviously 2 weeks before, you know, but now, right after this, I think it got bigger and broader because it was a different, we wanted to change the conversation. I'm not saying it's not worthy of attention, just the amount of attention and the kind of hyperbole in describing it seemed to me to be very interesting. And I got a note, I mean, the guy is in the pros, but he is not Michael Jordan.
No.
And as of this moment, I don't know that anyone's offering him a job. No. Yeah. So let's see. Yeah. You know.
I was about to say, it is a huge story. It's a watershed moment in American professional sports. And like you said, Kelly, imagine if he was an all-star, because he's really a marginal NBA player at this point and may not even be with a team going forward. But there was also the commentary about how it's not really a big deal. And I think that was more a commentary in terms of the acceptance that you're seeing from his teammates, at least publicly, from the public, from the fan base. So I think that's interesting. When it comes to female athletes, obviously, as Dan mentioned, Martina, people like Billie Jean King, they played professional sports, but they were individual sports where team chemistry and the locker room issue was a moot point. I also think that female athletes are under a little less pressure. If you want to be cynical, there's a little less at stake in terms of endorsement dollars. And I think, though, the reality is, when you look at it, I would say that the fan base for female sports, which don't get as much attention, certainly, are probably overall a more accepting, tolerant group than the folks that watch men's sports.
Question. I mean, it doesn't matter as much. I mean, women's sports in general just don't matter. So I
will say this one thing, you know, for years, the way that some of these other pros and names, as you say, have thrown an attack at one of their opponents or people they didn't like was to use gay slurs. Yeah. I think it's fascinating that Kobe Bryant has made absolutely certain that he's the first to tweet out when anybody comes forward to say they're gay, because he was one of those. So maybe in contrast to that, that makes it, you know, a little bit more interesting. You know what else is neat about it, too? I mean, basketball starts very early, and football, particularly basketball, that kids that are 12 years old, 14 years old that are playing basketball, there is a stereotype, forget the media, in the high schools of the strut of the basketball team, and you guys are the big, you know, studs on campus and all that. This says that you can be a gay kid at that age, and I just find it, and I also think it's interesting that for a change, race was not the focus right away. It was the macho stuff. So I thought
it probably should have been, because I mean,
well, no, I think there
is homophobia in.
Well, there is. That's changed there too. I think it's interesting that he revealed Jason Collins revealed in his Sports Illustrated article that he wore 98 to support Matthew Shepard. Who knew that?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
You know, a white gay kid. Who knew that?
I want to pick up on something that TJ said, and that is, this guy is so marginal.
Right.
He's not the first player to come out at the end of his career. He may be at the end of his career. If he doesn't make a team next year, he'll be an asterisk, and we'll still be waiting for the first.